back at it again with the Mobius Dickus, chapter 89, Fast Fish and Loose Fish. So this chapter is based on a simple concept, but has a lot of depth to it. The concept of fast fish and loose fish is about who owns whales when they're being pursued. As the rules are stated pretty clearly here, a fast fish belongs to the party fast to it. So a fast fish is it's something that is connected to an occupied ship or boat by any medium. So if you have a harpoon that is stuck in a fish and it's running away from you, you have a fast fish and it's yours. A loose fish is fair game for anybody who soonest catch it. So a loose fish is something that is not connected to a harpoon yet. So anyone can put their harpoon in the whale, and then it becomes a fast fish, and it's yours. So there's some fun playing with words here in terms of legal precedents based on fast fish, loose fish rules. So I'll talk about the funny stuff first, and then we'll get to the ideas second. So the funny anecdote that Melville uses here is that there was, someone sued over the notion that their wife left them, right? We'll read the passage. Mr. Erskine was the counsel for the defendants. Lord Ellenborough was the judge. In the course of the defense, the witty Erskine went on to illustrate his position by alluding to a recent Crimcon case. He's defending some people who took a whale after borrowing stuff from another person, wherein a gentleman, after in vain trying a bridle to reduce his wife's viciousness, had at last abandoned her upon the seas of life. But in the course of years, repenting of that step, he instituted an action to recover possession of her. Erskine was on the other side, and he then supported it by saying that though the gentleman had originally harpooned the lady, and had once had her fast, and only by reason of the great stress of her plunging viciousness, had last abandoned her, yet abandon her he did, so that she became a loose fish, and therefore when a subsequent gentleman re-harpooned her, the lady then became that subsequent gentleman's property, along with whatever harpoon might have been found sticking in her. Okay, so obviously there is a play on words with harpoon sticking in her. This is a relevant parallel to the case of the fact that this boat harpoons a whale, but it's going to kill them if they keep pursuing it. So they let it go, and then other people, the defendants, take the whale from them. So obviously the play on words is based on the harpoon, and it's saying, look, you get what you take, and if you let it go, other people can take it. I guess you could say that there's some vague misogyny here in terms of talking about, women as animals, but I think it's in the service of a pun, not necessarily Melville's true ideas. So obviously the question we're being asked about here is really the question of justice. Where does right come from? The rules of right for whaling are dictated by fast fish, loose fish, and that's just what everyone agrees to. But that system seems to say that the only thing that makes something yours is having the power and willingness to take it. That doesn't seem to track very well with our understanding of justice. We don't tend to think of justice as being based on who has more power. Like, it would be absurd to go into court and be like, well, I took my neighbor's food, but it's because I'm stronger than him and I got it first. Or I guess a better example in terms of whaling would be, both of us went to the grocery store and I saw a rotisserie chicken and I took it first, so it's mine. That's not necessarily how we think of justice, but Melville is going to challenge how humans operate in terms of justice real quick here. To do this, Melville is going to turn from the fast fish, loose fish distinction and say that this forms the basis of all legal thought. As he says in this bottom paragraph here, when he says, I will on reflection, these two laws touching fast fish and loose fish, I say, will on reflection be found the fundamentals of all human jurisprudence. Right? Thus he asks, is it not a saying in everyone's mouth, possession is half of the law? Actually, in America, we say it's 9/10 of the law. That is, regardless of how the thing came into possession, For often possession is the whole of the law. What are the sinews and souls of Russian serfs and Republican slaves but fast fish, whereof possession is the whole of the law? Okay, so Melville is saying fast fish are things that people have claimed, right, through force. And what are serfs and slaves in terms of justice but things that people have claimed through force? Remember, this book is written in 1851. Russian serfs are legally owned by their masters. The only rule that governed serf-master relations in Russia was that you couldn't kill serfs. You could do anything else to them with legal impunity. Same thing, obviously, with Republican slaves, though you could kill them if you wanted to. So Melville seems to be making a pretty clear shot at both the political system of Russia and America and saying, is there really any more justice in the owning of slaves than treating people like whales to be harpooned? And now he's going to go off on a different question. What to the rapacious landlord is the widow's last mite but a fast fish? Right? Once again, is there any justice in poor people being exploited for their last amount of money? Or is that just might makes right? What is yonder undetected villain's marble mansion with a doorplate for a waif? What is that but a fast fish? What is the ruinous discount which Mordecai the broker gets from the poor Woebegone, the bankrupt, on a loan to keep Woebegone's family from starvation? What is that ruinous discount but a fast fish? So he's saying, again, what is the exploitation of the poor other than simply treating people like whales to be harpooned? What is the Archbishop of Save Soul's income? He's using like an allegorical term. There is no place called Save Soul. What is the Archbishop of Save Soul's income of 100,000 pounds seized from the scant bread and cheese of hundreds of thousands of broken-backed laborers, all sure of heaven without any of Save Soul's help? What is that globular 100,000 but a fast fish? So once again, the exploitation of the poor is really Melville's main concern about justice. What are the Duke of Dunder's hereditary towns and hamlets but fast fish? What to that redoubted harpooner John Bull is poor Ireland but a fast fish? What to that apostolic lancer Brother Jonathan is Texas but a fast fish? So just for some background, John Bull was kind of an Uncle Sam-esque term for Britain. So once again, in terms of exploitation and injustice, Melville seems to be indicting Britain for their treatment of Ireland, right? Just treating it as an animal to be skewered and harpooned. And Brother Jonathan was actually a synonymous term for Uncle Sam back in the early 19th century before Uncle Sam became more popular. And he's saying that we did the same thing to Texas from Mexico. We just went over and we used our strength to take it away from someone. And concerning all these is not possession the whole of the law. So this should, once again, as a pattern you're noticing, be read through the lens of chapter 36 and 42. This is a pretty bleak chapter when it comes to justice thus far. It seems to be saying that justice is more like chapter 42. It's just empty. It's not actually there. It's what we project onto things. And in the case of all of these examples, these are instances where that emptiness is merely replaced by people who are strong taking from those who are weak and exploiting them. A pretty bleak notion of justice. But then let's continue, and it gets even kind of bleaker. But if the doctrine of fast fish be pretty generally applicable, the kindred doctrine of loose fish is still more widely so. That is internationally and universally applicable. So remember, loose fish is even more connected to the might makes right. So it's not just fast fish where the harpoon is the person who gets there first. Loose fish is anyone can take it if it's there. So they're connected. They're not different. Like loose fish and fast fish are part of the same theory. The same theory of whoever gets there first gets it, and that's justice. Okay. What was America in 1492 but a loose fish? Right? Of course, that ignores the American Native Americans, but it seems to be saying that, well, they don't count, so I guess America was a loose fish in which Columbus struck the Spanish standard by way of whaling it for his royal master and mistress. What was Poland to the Tsar? What is Greece to the Turk? What India to England? What at last will Mexico be to the United States? Loose fish. What are the rights of man and liberties of the world but loose fish? Okay, so Melville seems to be saying that ultimately it's pretty dark. He's saying, justice is what the strong determine justice to be, right? To the victor go the spoils, and the victor writes the story of how those things came to him. What all men's minds and opinions but loose fish? What is the principle of religious belief in them but a loose fish? What to the ostentatious, smuggling verbalists are the thoughts of thinkers but loose fish? What is the great globe itself but a loose fish? And what are you, reader, but a loose fish and a fast fish too? Boy, that's chock full of stuff there. He seems to be saying that men's minds and opinions are to be taken over by various other people's thoughts and opinions, right? Minds are loose fish. And then he seems to be saying in a very chapter 42-esque, universalizing statement, everything is loose fish. Everything is simply waiting to be taken over or controlled or shaped or molded by someone else who has more power over it. That there is no justice making sure the right thing happens. It's just the thing which is strongest happens. And then he takes this idea about people's thoughts being loose fish and he makes it personal to you, when obviously he's the one injecting thoughts into your head via this book. And he's saying you're a fast fish because you've been harpooned by this book, and you're a loose fish because your mind is open for anyone to influence. Which, of course, seems to contradict what he's doing here by making you aware of it. Perhaps you can remove the harpoon, or you can decide that the harpoon makes sense. You have more volition than a whale, right? Which contradicts some of his other statements that minds are merely fish to be harpooned because you're a fish who can notice that they're being harpooned. But ultimately, this is a pretty chapter 42-esque pessimistic view, not of meaning, which chapter 42 is about, but of justice and of rightness, or morality. This is the classic example of Machiavellian might makes right. Fast fish and loose fish tracks almost 100% with Machiavellianism. The strong survive, the strong dominate, and that's what the only basis for right. It's a provocative claim, not necessarily a claim that we agree with, but it's certainly something that we have to consider. All right, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.